sorry, just want to throw you the SM questions on the future...
Exam questions.
SM questions. Questions on SM, thoughts about the future cabinet minister with 2 terms. And also, will you join the PAP, if you know that, earlier that you get only 2 terms?
Well, I mean, that's what SM mentioned yesterday. That's his perspective. So maybe I'll just quote Dr. Wong Kan Seng. No, that wasn't my consideration at all. I think my priority really at this stage the key consideration was about reconciling my own personal space and life. That was a key thing. To me, my main concern was really family and how do we balance that time. Secondly is to make sure I don't lose myself in the process. I wasn't really looking at whether it's 2 terms, 3 terms, whatever. I'm not even, I don't presume. I operate on this basis. I don't presume anything. Even my whole time in the army, I've never asked where to go. I've never tried to track and position myself. I think it's important to just keep focused on what I need to do and to find meaning in every appointment you're given. And I've found meaning in every appointment I've done. And it's been tremendously enjoyable. In fact, I find it very liberating because it actually frees you up from being overly concerned about things. So that's a approach which I hope to take with me as I embark on this new journey.
So what happens after 2 terms?
Well, I suppose firstly, I won't assume that I'm holding office. If it does happen and if I'm only in for 2 terms, then I will look for a new job.
Go back to the army.
I think I'll be a bit old, so I think very difficult to chiong at that stage.
Do you think 2 terms is enough to make a difference?
I think it's difficult to say. I think there will be people who serve 1 term but have made tremendous amount of difference. People who serve longer term. So I think it really varies. It's really how you seize the bull by the horns and try your level best to make the difference. And I always believe this, small difference, big difference, but for an individual whose life you touch, that's all the difference it means to him. And I guess if we take that approach, obviously there's a lot of learning that needs to take place, and I think all of us have to put in the effort to learn as fast as we can. So whether as an MP, whether as a minister, in whatever capacity, be it 1 term, 2 terms or beyond that, I think the responsibility is to really put your heart and soul into it to do the best you can.
If you join the PAP, you were saying earlier that what matters most is to do the best for Singapore,
yes,
despite political affiliation. So why not join Workers' Party, SPP, etc.? Why join the PAP?
Because I think the PAP is the correct party to lead Singapore forward, both in terms of track record and in terms of, I think, what they believe in. And which is why I felt that the PAP is a party to join, to be able to serve our country.
As someone who has actually been very savvy with social media, Facebook, Twitter and all, I'm just wondering what kind of advice have you given your fellow running mates, fellow candidates about how they engage netizens online or even engage people and get a constructive dialogue going on. This is in reference to also Ms. Tin, who might be your teammate in Marine Parade GRC.
Well, firstly, I'm not an expert. I meddle around with Facebook. I don't know whether I'm savvy, but it was something that was forced upon me when I was doing a module in school, that you had to be on Facebook, because that's how the lecturer is going to communicate with us, which worked out fine, because it's kind of interesting. And I find it kind of fun to link up with old friends. Twitter I'm not familiar with right now, but I think Facebook is an interesting platform. I think it's about really understanding the whole cyberspace conversation, how it works, how people engage each other. And I think it's a very powerful tool, I think, for social engagement. And I do see the potential, actually, that social media is social media is just a platform. At the back of it must be the idea. What's the concept? What's the logic? You can't just have a Facebook and therefore you connect with people. It's how do you then use Facebook in a meaningful way? Because I think single points of contact can have a very long-lasting effects, because social media helps add on to that whole experience. So hopefully that's something I'm interested to look at and to explore further, how best to perhaps weave that into the whole building of networks and building of communities at the grassroots levels.
I got a question about some of the candidates this time around are new citizens, and there's been some rumblings on the ground that they were not happy that these new citizens did not serve NS. So from your point of view, coming from MINDEF, do you think that new citizens, especially those who have some political ambition, should serve some form of NS?
I think Singapore has to be an inclusive society. I think if you ask, well, perhaps you're a bit younger, but your parents, your grandparents, I think many of them were new citizens then. And I think this is an ongoing process. And I think it's a testimony that people want to make Singapore home. There are many different ways we can treat new citizens. One is to be embracing. I think the good qualities that Singaporeans and most Singaporeans have is really to embrace and bring people in. And they will become loyal citizens, and they will sink their roots in, and they will create their own identity, and their children will be citizens in their own right. As opposed to perhaps taking a very xenophobic perspective. I understand the concerns and whether the equity issues, but I think as with all nations, there will be a renewal. People will come, people will go. But I think when people come in and prepare to commit their time and their lives to Singapore in that capacity, clearly their children will serve national service. I have no doubt about that. So I don't see a contradiction, even from someone coming from the military, to welcome them, and especially to welcome them to play a leadership role in Singapore.
As quite a garang and Jiangsuan man in the military, I'm just wondering, the latest photo on the maid helping the soldier to carry a backpack, right? Well, the latest news is that the soldier has owned up and said, and has owned up to his commanders. I'm just wondering, and said that he's going to apologize. I'm just wondering, do you think, how fair is it, the characterization that, we are raising a generation of softies? I just want to get your views on that.
I think that picture is symptomatic of a number of things. One, and I'll address the issue later, is about the impact of new media. One snapshot, and suddenly it goes viral and it goes around the world, even, I think. It's probably still cascading somewhere. And then suddenly that snapshot becomes symbolic of something more. Would that be a fair way to look at it? It could be a snapshot which is taken out of context. We don't know. But let's assume that in this case, the soldier did ask the maid to carry. But I don't think in any way it represents most of my NSmen and our NSF who serve actively. I mean, in the ground units, we will go and march 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers, fast marches, and our soldiers do that. I don't see their mates around carrying food bags. So our people are able to do that. Now, whether it represents that society is getting soft, I think as with every urban society, as it progresses with economic progress, I think it's inevitable. I don't think it's just us. But I think in many cities in the world, the same thing is happening. So I guess the challenge really is how do we maintain and continue to emphasize on that element of resilience, given the constraints that we have. So I would say that it's a fair question to ask. And I think it's something that we as parents have to ask in the way we bring up our children. And we as a society have to ask ourselves in terms of the emphasis that we provide. Are there things that we can do at the individual level? And are there things that we can do at a societal level to help perhaps address these concerns?
So are you kind of admitting that maybe the new generation of soldiers might be less rugged, less resilient in a way?
No, I think they are rugged and resilient. I have no doubt about that. Obviously, there are, in an army of our size, there will be individuals who are not as rugged as resilient. As in the army 20 years ago, there will be soldiers who are less rugged and resilient. If you take a snapshot of that soldier then, maybe he didn't have a mate carrying the food bag, but maybe there was something else. So I think with every generation, you have people who are capable and able, and there are people who are perhaps, for their own reasons, are less rugged. I think the key thing for us really is to focus on how do we as a society try to make sure as many of our people are rugged and resilient as possible.
For the older generation, like for example my dad, he laments about the NSF getting better treatment now than before.
Yes, well, I came in at a time where my bed was a foam mattress. I had this black, I don't think even Bata shoes. We had army cooks, and you wonder what they put into their food. So is it more comfortable? I think so. I think correctly, we have moved with the times. I don't think we want to keep the physical environment the way it was. I think training is also slightly different. In the past, a lot were done by rote training, just shout at people and then, so just go and and let's do it. But today, I think we try to reason, because I think it's important, because it's a generational change. You need to teach and you need to learn in a different way.